consider the possibility that the substance we have worshipped, fought wars over, and used to anchor our global economies possesses a purpose entirely different from what modern science understands. Throughout human history, gold has remained the ultimate prize, a glittering constant in the rise and fall of every major empire. We have always assumed its value was a byproduct of its rarity and its beauty, a terrestrial mineral of immense worth. But what if the people who first mastered the art of civilization left behind a message claiming that gold was never intended to be a simple metal? Deep within the archives of ancient Mesopotamia, a specific clay record has emerged that challenges the empirical framework of modern archaeology. This text, written in a language that predates the classical world by millennia, describes element 79 as a vital, functional component of a cosmic design, rather than a passive resource for trade. While conventional history views gold as a medium of exchange, these ancient records present it as a tool, an active, necessary substance that the oldest known human society believed was essential for the survival of those they called gods. If the alternative interpretations of these Sumerian inscriptions are correct, the true nature of this element has remained hidden from humanity for thousands of years, buried beneath the dust of forgotten cities and the rigid certainty of modern scholarship. We are only now beginning to uncover the evidence that our ancestors were working toward a secret that could dismantle everything we think we know about the world's most valuable element. Landscape of dust and silence. But beneath this sun-scorched earth lie the foundations of empires like Nippur, and Eridu. These were once vibrant urban centers that managed massive irrigation projects and complex social hierarchies, all centered around temples that claimed to host the divine architects of humanity. For over a century, teams of archaeologists have committed decades of labor to peeling back the layers of this landscape. The 19th and 20th century excavations brought these lost cities back to the surface, revealing walls of sun-dried brick and vast networks of palace rooms. In these trenches, workers uncovered the physical artifacts of a people who seemed to appear in history almost fully formed, possessing a sophisticated understanding of mathematics and engineering that continues to baffle researchers who study the development of early human societies. The most significant find from these ruins wasn't gold or jewels, but the records themselves. Unlike civilizations that relied on paper or parchment, which decay in the dampness of the earth, the Sumerians etched their knowledge into imperishable clay. Scribes pressed wedge-shaped marks into wet earth to create cuneiform, a writing system of immense complexity. When these tablets were baked or simply dried in the arid heat, they became permanent stone libraries, preserving the thoughts, laws, and myths of a 5,000-year-old culture in a nearly indestructible format. Deciphering this dead language was an academic undertaking of unparalleled difficulty. For generations, linguists struggled to map the phonetics and ideograms of Sumerian, a language isolate that has no known relatives. It is a system where a single symbol can represent a syllable, a word, or a complex concept, often changing meaning based on its placement within a column. Only through the discovery of trilingual inscriptions and the painstaking work of philologists were we able to finally hear the voices of the scribes who lived at the dawn of history. Recently, a new wave of alternative researchers began re-examining these translations, specifically focusing on the administrative accounts of temple storehouses. They identified a series of anomalies in how gold was cataloged and handled. These passages don't describe gold in the context of jewelry or decorative art, but rather as a substance undergoing complex refinement processes that defy logical terrestrial explanations for an early Bronze Age culture. The descriptions involve heating, grinding, and suspending the metal in ways that modern mineralogists find highly unusual for a society that supposedly only used the metal for ornamentation. These unconventional findings have coalesced into a fringe theory that challenges the very foundation of historical consensus. The theory suggests the Sumerians did not view gold as a natural resource for trade or status. Instead, they cataloged it as an essential functional material required by a superior group of beings, the Anunnaki, for a purpose that extended far beyond the borders of our planet. This interpretation claims the entire Sumerian civilization was organized around the extraction of this single element for a higher functional requirement. Alternative historians point to a specific narrative found across several fragmented tablets. According to this interpretation, the Anunnaki, the princely offspring of the heavens, required massive quantities of gold to repair the atmosphere of their homeworld. The theory suggests the gold was processed into a monoatomic powder and released into their upper atmosphere to reflect heat or radiation. While this sounds like modern science fiction, those who support this claim argue that the Sumerian word for gold, ku-gi, carries a literal meaning related to terrestrial dust of the gods, implying a utility that was never meant for human hands. When looking at a primary source like this clay fragment, the immense density of the text becomes apparent. This is not a simple narrative. It is a complex technical or administrative document. The fine cuneiform marks are packed so tightly that translations often vary significantly between scholars. A single wedge can be the difference between a description of a golden cup and a golden conductor. This linguistic ambiguity is where alternative interpretations flourish, as researchers argue standard academic translations have systematically ignored the technical nuances. In many of these tablets, specific conceptual blocks are separated by these vertical lines, suggesting a rigorous categorization of information. Alternative researchers have isolated columns that focus on the weight of the spirit and the purity of the shine. They argue that the grammar in these sections identifies gold as an active technology rather than a passive metal. In their view, the text is describing the elemental properties of gold, its conductivity and its incorruptibility, as features being utilized in a complex, large-scale operation that mirrors our modern understanding of specialized materials. Mainstream scholarship maintains a much more grounded position. Academic historians argue that these texts must be understood through the lens of ancient commerce, records of temple administration, and metaphorical poetry. To a mainstream researcher, a golden temple is simply a building adorned with wealth to honor a deity. They see the alternative interpretations as a projection of modern technological concepts onto an ancient culture that was simply recording the economic reality of a high-status material used by a ruling elite. Despite this fierce debate over literal translation, there is a surprising point of agreement between both camps. Both mainstream scholars and alternative theorists acknowledge that the Sumerians elevated gold to a status that far exceeds its utility as a mineral. Whether viewed as a tool for the gods or a symbol of divine light, these ancient texts present gold as the single most important physical substance in the universe, bridging the gap between Earth and the celestial realms. The investigation into these claims must also account for the established mythological framework found in the 7 tablets of creation. These Babylonian records, which inherited much of their theology from the earlier Sumerians, describe the ordering of the cosmos and the birth of the gods. In these texts, gold is consistently identified as the physical manifestation of the divine, the very flesh of the gold, suggesting that for the ancients, the element was not just associated with the divine, it was the divine in a physical form. This symbolic link created a culture where the ownership of gold was strictly controlled. Within the mythology of the Epic of Gilgamesh, the quest for immortality is mirrored by the pursuit of precious substances that never tarnish or decay. Gold represented divine authority and the permanence of the heavens. Because gold does not change, it was viewed as the only material suitable for the tools and dwellings of the eternal gods. This established a precedent where the metal was essentially forbidden for common use, a restriction that later alternative theories would point to as evidence of its functional, non-human purpose. Sumerian kings and high priests sought to physically manifest this divine authority by adorning themselves in the same materials. This golden helmet, found in the royal tombs of Ur, is a masterpiece of early metallurgy. The intricate engraved patterns and stylized ear demonstrate craftsmanship that sought to transform the wearer into a biological representation of a god. By wearing gold, the king was literally putting on the armor of the divine, a psychological and spiritual tool used to command the early human populations. We see further evidence of this elite obsession in jewelry like this necklace, featuring gold leaf-shaped pendants. For the Sumerians, gold was almost always paired with lapis lazuli, a blue stone that represented the night sky. Together, these materials were used to recreate the celestial map on the bodies of the elite. This was a physical hierarchy of power, where gold acted as the anchor, the immutable core that signified a person's proximity to the heavenly creators who supposedly demanded the metal's extraction. Later alternative narratives would eventually hijack these symbolic mythological references. They took the descriptions of gold-fleshed gods and celestial gold and expanded them into a literal narrative of physical, advanced, ancient technology. They argue that the myths weren't metaphors for divine light, but eyewitness accounts of a specific non-terrestrial race utilizing gold as a material solution. This shift in perspective transforms the entire religious history of Mesopotamia into an industrial logbook for an extraterrestrial mining operation. Moving into the more speculative realms of forbidden history, some researchers investigate gold as an active medium for supernatural energy. They propose that the Sumerians used gold as a sacred conductor, a material capable of focusing and directing what they called me, the divine decrees or powers of the gods. In this view, the massive golden shrines were not just for show, they were primitive energy receptors designed to interface with a spiritual or mental field that modern science has yet to acknowledge. This theory reaches its furthest extreme with the idea that gold was a direct link to advanced divine machinery. Proponents suggest that the artifacts we find in Sumerian tombs are actually remnants of a lost technology. They argue that the high conductivity and non-reactive nature of gold made it the only material capable of bridging the gap between biological life and the sophisticated machinery of the gods. In this scenario, the tablets are essentially user manuals for a system that was dismantled and taken away, leaving humanity with only the myths of its existence. The sociology behind these theories is as interesting as the theories themselves. Modern audiences are profoundly fascinated by the idea of lost ancient magic because it suggests that human history is not a linear climb from ignorance to knowledge, but a cycle that has seen much higher peaks than our current era. It offers the hope that the secrets to longevity, energy, and cosmic connection were once known to our ancestors, and that by deciphering these ancient tablets, we might reclaim a forgotten inheritance. We must, however, return to the empirical reality. While these theories of sacred circuitry and cosmic mining are captivating, they completely lack scientific consensus. There is no physical evidence of the tools or secondary technologies required to sustain such an operation in the archaeological record of Mesopotamia. To find the truth about gold, we have to move past the myths and look at the hard physical evidence provided by the atom itself. This high-resolution microscope image shows the textured surface of gold, revealing the microscopic metallic islands that define its physical structure. Modern science classifies gold as the 79th element on the periodic table, but its properties are truly exceptional among the transition metals. Because of the sheer mass of its nucleus, the electrons in a gold atom move so quickly that they are subject to relativistic effects. This contraction of its electron shells is the physical reason gold possesses its distinct yellow hue. It is literally a metal that manifests the laws of Einstein's relativity to the naked eye. These same relativistic effects make gold practically immortal. Its full outer electron shell is so stable that it effortlessly repels incoming oxygen and moisture, making gold chemically inert. It is the most corrosion-resistant metal known to man. A gold artifact can sit at the bottom of the ocean or buried in damp earth for 5,000 years and emerge looking exactly as it did the day it was forged. This physical immortality is not a myth. It is a direct consequence of its atomic structure, making it the only substance that truly defies the passage of time. We utilize these miraculous properties in every facet of our modern technological era. This close-up of gold-plated contact pins on a circuit board demonstrates why gold is the backbone of our digital world. Because it refuses to tarnish, it provides a flawless electrical connection that never degrades. Every smartphone, every medical ventilator, and every supercomputer on the planet depends on the unique conductivity and reliability of gold to function. Without this element, the modern world as we know it would literally cease to operate. We even use gold to protect our most advanced endeavors in space. This gold foil wrapping the leg of the lunar landing craft is not decorative, it is a vital shield. Gold is a highly efficient reflector of infrared radiation. In the vacuum of space, where there is no atmosphere to block the sun's lethal heat, a thin layer of gold is often the only thing standing between our sensitive equipment and total destruction. We are, in a very literal sense, using gold as a celestial shield, mirroring the very purpose described in the alternative translations of the Sumerian tablets. The ultimate irony of this investigation is that science proves gold is a terrestrial metal, but its real-world technological applications rival the divine, magical properties imagined by the Sumerians. While we may reject the idea of ancient mining operations, we cannot deny that we treat gold exactly as the tablets described, as a material of such singular utility that it is essential for our survival in the stars and our connection across the globe. If we move past the literal claims of technology, we find a different kind of truth hidden in the tablet. If the Sumerians were not describing a physical extraction process, it is possible they were preserving a symbolic warning. By designating gold as the exclusive property of the gods, they established a social and psychological barrier intended to prevent humanity from becoming consumed by the pursuit of material wealth. History shows that we did not heed this warning. These towering stacks of gold bars locked in high-security vaults represent the obsession that has shaped the human story. The relentless pursuit of this metal has repeatedly corrupted and destroyed civilizations. From the Roman expansion to the conquest of the New World, the hunger for gold has driven us to sacrifice millions of lives and destabilize entire continents. The Sumerians understood that a substance that never decays could become a dangerous obsession for a mortal species. This leads to the most difficult question of all. What truly gives this shiny rock its value? Is it the conductivity we use in our chips? Or is it a deeper, more ancient psychological pull that we still don't fully understand? We must ask ourselves what the ultimate cost is when a society values the accumulation of material wealth and imperishable metal above the wisdom and the human lives that are, by their very nature, fragile and temporary. The Sumerian scribes were likely not preserving a secret formula for energy, but a psychological truth about our own nature. They saw that our fixation on the eternal could blind us to the needs of the present. The tablet's message, when stripped of its mythological and technological layers, reveals a mirror. It shows a civilization that recognized its own greed and attempted to hide it behind a divine decree, hoping that if gold belonged to the gods, it would stay out of the hands of men. But gold may be only the beginning of what the Sumerians chose to hide, because another forgotten tablet, buried even deeper in the archives, allegedly describes a far more dangerous substance, one capable of bridging the divide between humanity and the creators themselves. A secret so unsettling that history may have intentionally buried it in the sand for 5,000 years. And that's the mystery we'll uncover in our next investigation.